Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to look at an example of how a theory of change might evolve over the life of your campaign. And we're going to look again at this very famous campaign of the Montgomery bus boycott, in which maybe you're going to learn something that is not so well known about how this campaign evolved. This is a map of the key actors in the Montgomery bus boycott using the software Kumu. So the white power structure in the city is here in the orange and yellow, and the African American is here in the green. And so if you ask the question to Joanne Robinson, Fred Gray, and then the preachers Martin Luther King, Ralph Abernathy, how did you think you guys were going to win at the beginning, right? This is in December 1955. Well, first they would say, well, what is a win, right? Our win for us is we want fair treatment. They didn't want to abolish segregation. They wanted to abolish segregation. They didn't think that was possible, right? What they thought was possible and feasible, given their constraints, was to be treated fairly, right? And under the segregated system, meaning in their case to be able to sit in, for example, the white section of the bus when those seats were available. Right, that would be an example of more fair treatment under the existing segregated system, and just less harassment, less bad treatment by the bus drivers. So they thought again that they had two basic options for how this was going to be achieved. Either they could negotiate it directly with the mayor and the white leaders of the city, or litigate. But they did not think at that time in December that it was possible to create a lawsuit to change this bus policy in their city. They weren't ready. They didn't think that they had the capacity to create a lawsuit. They thought that they had relationships with the city. They thought that if they could make this boycott happen, show the economic power of the black community, that the city would negotiate. So this was the basis of their initial theory of change. Stay off the buses, remain nonviolent, keep the lines of communication open, and that is the best chance of creating the pressure to get to a negotiated settlement. Well, what actually happened? I'll give the story to Joanne told in her book on the boycott. Up until late January, so remember the campaign started in early December, so this is now almost 2 months into the campaign. Up until late January, black people had not been making a real effort to abolish segregation on city transportation lines, but only to secure a satisfactory seating arrangement under the segregation laws. And until now, no one had brought a case against the city, meaning a legal case, against the city of Montgomery for the purpose of integrating the buses or any other transportation facility. But now people had gotten tired, had gained more courage, had sworn to break down all segregation in the area of travel. Now they felt they had no choice. The city commission had seen to that. So what they had learned, what they didn't know when the boycott started, but what they learned in the first 2 months of the campaign was that the city was so committed to segregation that even under great economic pressure, they were not going to negotiate a change. At the request of clients, attorneys had looked into the matter, but had hesitated, since they expected, because of the present situation in the city, some case involving the integration issue to be brought before the courts. Lawyers had also hesitated to file the case because of the fear of reprisals they felt the filing would evoke, since such a suit would have undoubtedly been brought by black people against white people. And we knew that based on the way that the South was run at that time, that physical violence against black people was always a clear and present danger. One attorney warned his clients of threats, intimidations, disturbing telephone calls, and the like, and insisted that potential plaintiffs be quite sure that you know what you are doing, meaning that there would be big risks if any individual filed a lawsuit. The lawyers burned the midnight oil many nights preparing their case, for they knew that the lawyers for the city would be merciless in their efforts to defeat them, and the black lawyers could not afford to be defeated. The stakes were too high. Innocent people, the boycotters, the tens of thousands of people who had paid this personal cost to stay off the bus system, literally would be destroyed if the case were lost. The lawyers had to win the case. Then, Dr. King's home was bombed. That was it. On Tuesday, January 31st, 1956, Fred Gray was authorized by 5 of his clients to file the suit. By 11 a.m. on Wednesday, February 1st, the papers were ready to be filed in the U.S. District Court. This case was designed to integrate all transportation in the city of Montgomery. So now you see that the organizers of the campaign, in response to what they were observing, right, the level of violence was greater. The level of resistance from the white power structure was greater. Their first theory of change was no longer considered their best strategy. So instead of this first theory of change that involved putting pressure through the boycott on the city to get them to negotiate, they had a new theory of change based on filing a lawsuit. Now, what gave them hope that this was going to succeed? Right, this new, more ambitious goal was going to succeed. Well, first, they had successfully stayed off the buses. They had successfully remained nonviolent. They knew that they could maintain that part of their campaign, the moral high ground necessary to win support within the judicial system. Even the judicial system in Alabama had some moderate judges who would respect the recent national court ruling from the Supreme Court that had said that segregated schools were unconstitutional. This was the Brown versus Board of Education case in the year before, 1954, had said that the schools all over United States had to be integrated. And so no court had yet ruled whether this was also true of public transportation, but it was a similar case. It was a public space paid for with taxpayer money, and they had a reasonable constitutional case that this would work, as long as they kept the moral high ground. So they changed their goal, right? They had this moral solidarity, this sense of courage, this sense of self-belief that came from the success of the boycott. They realized that the negotiations weren't possible. But if they filed the lawsuit that was able to, on constitutional grounds, win a favorable ruling at the level of the district court, that's the lower court, that this could ultimately be raised to the level of the national Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, if they upheld the ruling, that this would force the local city leaders to change the law, that they were unwilling to negotiate. But this required, again, that the boycott continue, that they not compromise on nonviolence, and that they had the legal expertise sufficient to follow the legal process. In May, they win the first of the steps in the lawsuit, a 3-judge federal court. The arguments are heard in May. In June, they rule by a vote of 2-1 that segregated seating in Montgomery was unconstitutional. Of course, the city commission, the mayor and his political backers said, well, we're going to appeal this to the Supreme Court. Fine, that's their right to do that. And then in November, finally, the U.S. Supreme Court upholds the district court in Alabama. The city commission wants to delay this as long as possible. They don't want to see their buses integrated. But in December 1956, U.S. Marshals, which are the agents of the U.S. justice system, formally served the Supreme Court order on the city of Montgomery. And in December 21st of that year, a little more than a year after the boycott began, was the first day of fully integrated buses in Alabama. Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King are among the first riders of those integrated buses. So why did I say that this is something that maybe we don't often appreciate? Well, because if we look, it wasn't the boycott itself in that first theory of change that caused the change. The boycott had to go through its first phase in order for this first theory of change to be ultimately abandoned and replaced with another theory of change behind the lawsuit. And it was the lawsuit ultimately, not the boycott alone, that forced the city to change its policy. So I hope you've seen a little bit about the basic concepts of a theory of change, how to explain that theory of change to get more people on board, and how a theory of change can itself evolve over the life of a campaign. So I wish you great luck in building your theory of change, and I hope to see you soon.